Okay, hello everyone and welcome to our first live stream from Turn2us to celebrate National Co-Production Week. We're really excited to be here and hope you enjoy what we've got planned for you for the next hour. So we'll start with a round of introductions, I think. So I'm Abby. I previously used the Turn2us grant search tool when I was younger. And I've been the co-production and participation officer with Turn2us since December. Karen.
Hello, my name is Karen. I live in rural Kent. I've been volunteering for Turn2us for about 2 years now. I've also had help from them, and I also have been helping with relaunching their benefits calculator, which I have used in the past and found extremely useful.
Thank you. And Philippa.
Hello, I am Philippa. I live in London. I used Turn2us before I received the grant from Turn2us, and I've used the benefits calculator several times. I'm also part of the group that is kind of brainstorming an improvement to the benefits calculator, and that's how I started the co-production. And yeah, that's it.
Cool, thank you. And Kaylee.
Hi, I'm Kaylee. I am a service user of Turn2us, and Abby kindly reached out to me to ask me to take part in some projects. I've been doing this for the last few weeks and really enjoying it. I live on the South Coast, and probably very different to a lot of the other people who are in bigger cities and stuff, so I'm quite happy to be helping out, really.
Fab. Emma Jane.
Hi, I'm Emma Jane. I was a civil servant for quite a few years until my health forced me to take early retirement. I've been involved in a couple of different projects with Turn2us, the benefits calculator and some co-production since last December.
Cool. And Charlene.
Hi, my name's Charlene, and I'm currently a full-time carer for my son who has autism, and I'm involved in Turn2us with their co-production of their benefit calculator.
Wonderful. And Varun.
Hello, so I work at Turn2us with Abby, so I'm part of the campaign's communications team. I'm actually learning a lot about co-production at the moment as well, so this is making this conversation even more interesting for me, and really seeing sort of the value of working with you guys and others to kind of put together our program and understand how to help people. So yeah, so excited to be here.
Yes. So before we start, let me just say, if you're watching, please feel free and encouraged to engage with us in the chats, either the Facebook chat, the Twitter chat, LinkedIn. We're asking for questions throughout, and we're going to be answering those questions in the final section of today's session. So yeah, anything that comes into your head that you think we'd like to answer or you'd like to hear us answer, get involved and just type it and Varun will pick it up. So we thought we'd start by outlining co-production and the 3 key questions that we're going to be answering today. So co-production, as it's otherwise referred to as involvement, participation, co-design, there's a few words for it, but it's essentially working with and therefore sharing power with people who have experienced whatever issue you're working on firsthand. So if, like us at Turn2us, you're a charity who provides information and money to people who need it, we will strive to co-produce our work with people who know what it's like to not have enough money to get by on. And there's arguably no greater expertise than having had experienced something firsthand. And I think it's flawed that organisations from charities to government do not prioritise co-producing their work with people. I'm sure we'll hear more about that today. So the traditional way that charities work, namely handouts and not hand-ups, doing to and not doing with, is, you could say, quite paternalistic and a bit problematic. And perhaps it even keeps people limited within their like service user box, despite them being experts in their own problems. And there's a saying in the co-production community that is, the closer you are to the problem, the closer you are to the solution. And therefore, the rationale for co-production is twofold. Not only is it ethically sound to share our power, the power we get through salaries we receive, through the resources and connections we have access to. So not only is it ethically sound to share that power with the people who receive the services, but it also means you get a better quality service because it's been informed by the insight and expertise of people who will go on to use that service. And, you know, we see again and again resources wasted in the UK by failed attempts at projects that didn't properly include people who know the issues best. You know, services in the social security system, in charities, political parties losing really badly in elections because those with a lived experience aren't centred in the planning and delivery of what they're doing. And I would echo what Hilary Cotton, who's the author of a book on the welfare state called Radical Help, says, in that we need to change how we do things as a society. And that starts with working with, not for, people with lived experience of that issue at hand. And, you know, in terms of Turn to Us, we're very much at the start of our journey with co-production, and we accept that we have a lot to do before we're properly co-producing our work. And there's a risk, because nowadays, like, co-production is a bit of a buzzword, a word people might throw around in the third sector when they're actually referring to consultation, or they're actually just asking people to fill in a survey, or inviting someone to attend one meeting with little context. And it's something that we have to be mindful of ourselves too, for sure. And I think in order to do that, it's important to view activities through the lens of power sharing. So how much of a decision as staff in that decision, how much power in that decision does staff have? And who's making that decision? And does that feel fair and right? So with all that, we thought we would answer 3 questions today in this session on co-production. Firstly, why should organisations co-produce their work? What is the value of lived experience? And what are the barriers within co-production? So they're the 3 questions that I'm putting to the roundtable today and that everyone's going to answer. And with that, it is my honour to hand the mic over to our first speaker, Kaylee.
Hiya, hi. I've just got a few notes here. I've thought long and hard about this, and I think it's very important for me. I mean, I believe in this so much. So I only learned about co-production a few weeks ago when I started this project. So I'm kind of just going to say it from my point of view, and what I've kind of discovered is I think that co-producing with service users means that they can get exactly what they need. It gives them a chance to put their voices forward and be heard, and new clients and service users can then hear more about it through other people who are living similar lives to them. I personally heard about Turn to Us through other charities like Crisis and also Universal Credit, because at the time they didn't know really what I was entitled to. You know, I'd just been let go from a job and I kind of didn't know what to do. So yeah, I'm really glad that I heard about it, because now I'm getting kind of what I need and I know the steps to take of what to do. I think all charities, as much as possible, should use co-production, because it goes both ways. It helps the service user and them, so the charities then get more awareness, and the service users, obviously, as I said before, get what they want out there. They get the voices heard. So things like social media and avenues like that gets to a wider audience. And I feel that people with lived experience, especially coming in to do this co-production with the charities. You know, for us, it's Turn2us. It lends itself really well because, you know, the charity can get a great handle on what they can do to go forward, as well as what the people need, and ways to improve their service and things like that. So I think it's just a brilliant thing to do. And I do think that this hopefully will take off with a lot more services and charities and things like that. Obviously, I can only speak from this point of view of working with Turn2us, but I think the fact that they reached out to me says a lot about them as a charity. And, you know, I feel really honoured to kind of be part of it, really. And I feel really respected, and they've taken on board everything I've said. So yeah, I think if you want to do co-production, definitely look into it, and hopefully it will help you, sorry, to feel more you know, heard, listened to. And a lot of people are in the dark still. They don't really know what services to look out for, but I think it's down to people like us to really get the word out there. So that's me, really. I mean, I was sort of in and out of work, had a few personal issues, and, you know, I'm still respected as a human being. So yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing, Kaylee, and it's our honour to co-produce with you as well. And thank you. And I think I really liked your point about it being like a two-way street. Like, it's not just, there's like well-being benefits to staff and people that use the services and come and get involved, because it helps like everyone feel heard as well. Wonderful. So we'll now go to Charlene.
Thank you, Abby. So with regards to the questions, the first one is why should organisations co-produce their work? So in practice, co-producing is where people are involved in creating public policies and services. The people involved are not only just consultants, but they're part of the concept and the design, and sometimes manage the service. So in order for lessons to be learned with any faults within the service of an organisation, they need to identify the sector that needs to be developed, and this needs to be grown to get raw, honest feedback from the users, as they are the right individuals to be having a conversation with. Co-production needs to be an option going forward, especially now with the current situation due to the global pandemic. Organisations need to use this as a turning point for 2020 to make it for a real change. There are many, many examples of co-production that's working well, but it's not had that media spotlight that it deserves. So obviously, with a holistic approach, service users and senior members of management need to be sitting around the table like us, having this conversation, building on the principles of those that are affected by the service, and to put in practice the best policies and processes to help going forward. The values of lived experiences is the concept to be approached from the view that every life experience has an objective and a subjective compound. So it's important for researchers to have an approach to get the right feedback. Real life experiences more measurable than ever before, with more and more people finding ourselves in these situations where processes are just not working. What are the barriers of co-production is just simple. It's a lack of understanding and knowledge of what co-production really is. That's the major barrier. Often organisations and professionals find it difficult to co-produce their work, as they believe that it to be too expensive. They have no clear benefit. They don't understand the core of what co-producing is. It's a buzzword. So obviously with the buzzword comes obviously unknown. It's about community, cooperating, coming together to make things better.
Thanks so much, Charlene. Like, yeah, really feel what you're saying, and so interesting that like you feel the main barrier is that like people just don't know enough about it. And I didn't really know what the word meant until I saw the job that I'm in now, but then I realised I'd actually been doing it. I just hadn't put the word co-production to it. So I think sadly it's a new way of working. I wish it was the traditional way of working, but it's not. But we're part of a culture change, and that takes time. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting as well to reflect on the current pandemic and whether it feels like we're at a turning point in some way. And could this also be a turning point for a new way of approaching how we listen to each other and approaching how that relationship between a person using a service and a person giving a service. And like you said, it's not just charity, it's government, it's private sector, it's a whole system, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. 2020, I think, definitely does need to be the year for change. With obviously things that do happen, I think that if we do come together, power to the people, we could probably make government stand up and take note of us. Because like he said, he can't save every single job.
Feel that. Okay, let's move on to Emma Jane. But before I do, I'll just remind everyone that's watching, please comment, ask questions. We're going to give time at the end to answer them. So yeah, get involved. Cool. Emma Jane.
Thanks, Abby. I think organisations should co-produce their work because it's the best way to evaluate whether a particular policy, programme, recommendation or whatever will work in the real world and not just in theory. It might be easy to analyse data and develop a theory which may seem to point in a particular direction, but you need to make sure that your ideas will have the effect you want in practice, and especially not have negative unintended consequences. I'm sure we can all think of examples of where a policy's been done without too much consultation or forethought and hasn't worked out in the way it was intended to. The value of lived experience is that no one knows better the impact of any given experience than the person who's going through it. And this can be a very powerful tool, especially with people who don't have that experience, not just emotionally, but in practical terms. The person with the lived experience can say not only how it made them feel, but also what happened, how it happened, and how they managed to overcome it, and what helped or hindered them in doing so. Barriers to co-production might be if the person leading the project doesn't have the relevant experience themselves, they may not know what questions they need to ask or how to ask in the best way to get the information they want from the person who does have the lived experience. They may have to think of ways to make it easier for the person with the lived experience to tell what they know, and consider all kinds of accessibility, as well as providing the right environment, like, for example, privacy, plenty of time, or whatever's going to make someone feel comfortable.
Yeah, completely agree. They're really excellent points. I think definitely the point about we can't just like invite people into like a traditional standard office space and expect everyone to just be able to flourish and say, because you're asking people to be vulnerable, like to come and say, I have this lived experience of this not particularly pleasant experience either, and you want me to come and talk about it. So yeah, we definitely need that lens of how can it be accessible for absolutely everyone? Does that mean we have to like redefine what good looks like and stretch ourselves to make sure that we can listen and properly hear everyone? Yeah. And I think, again, like you said, the point about how many policies, how many services have essentially just become a waste because they weren't properly researched, they weren't, people that are receiving those services weren't properly consulted, and then it just becomes more. I
can't think of how many times decisions have been made that affected me that I wasn't even consulted, knew nothing about until it was too late.
Yeah, and that's just, that can't be right. That can't be the both. That can't be the most effective way to run something, can it?
It's hopeless.
Completely agree. Thanks, Emma Jane. Now let's hear from Philippa.
Hello, so I'm going to also answer these questions. Why should organizations co-produce their work? I'm also quite new to the concept of co-production via Turn2us, but I mean, once you know what it is, the difficulty is to how can you not work in co-production, because it just doesn't make sense to work without having the people who are affected by, you know, any other issues collaborating with you and cooperating with you. So like once I started working, I started working with benefits calculator, and I wasn't even aware I was co-producing, and now that I know that this exists, I'm just like so enthusiastic about the potential of it and how it can totally change how things, I mean, I have like an example, which I'm not a political person at all. And, you know, I don't follow politicians or anything, but I remember now during the pandemic, there was like one time that I heard like Boris Johnson talking in one of those things they do every day now. And he was saying, and now you can all, you know, you can have a barbecue in your gardens. And I'm like, who is this person talking? Like, most people don't have a garden. Why, you know, they're just like giving us the privilege of having a barbecue in the garden. No, not most people don't have gardens. And like, you know, starting with the government, how can they do their work if they're totally disconnected with the reality and how people live their day-to-day lives? So, I mean, that's the why, you know, the why is why not, and how is it possible to work without having this element? The value of lived experience, obviously, like, you know, everyone talked about this, and, you know, I don't have much to add on here, but obviously, like, you can't change things, or you can't help people if you don't know the people you're helping and you're working with. So like having people from all walks of life participating in building something together is obviously extremely valuable in itself. And the barriers, I think the barriers it's a new thing. Surprisingly, it is a new thing. I also think that, you know, probably it's not the most efficient way of working because you're dealing with real life. So you do have, because if you're doing things in theory with the things you learned in university and PhDs and everything, and you're just doing it, oh yeah, well, there's this problem, we sort it out like that. If it's easy to sort things theoretically, obviously, when you have like real input, real life, it is apparently less effective. It takes less time, but in the long term, I believe it's more efficient because you're actually doing something that it's working for the people you want to help. So that's one of the barriers. I think it might be or seem to be less efficient and more expensive to work in this way. And it's the lack of awareness as well. And also having the right people and people from all walks of life. And I've seen this with Turn2us, that we are a very varied group of people. You have like people from, you know, all different backgrounds and ages and everything, and so that's very important and to keep in mind. Yes, I think I will leave it for now and happy to answer any questions that come up.
Thanks so much. No, thank you, Philippa. That was really, really good. And I think what you said is true. Like, people might say, oh, but it's just going to take so much longer to co-produce though, and it's going to cost us more money, and we know how to do it. We've got a degree in it. We know how to do this. But that's kind of the system we run now, and we have so many services go to waste because they're not done properly. And I think it's about rewiring the way people think. so that, like Turn2us now, we're investing in co-production. Yeah, it takes longer, but we're happy for it to take longer because we're doing it in such a better, more meaningful way. And it's about, yeah, getting buy-in from people to understand that that investment is worth it, because it pays in dividends when that service goes on to last forever.
Mm-hmm. And also, like when you have like consultancies and things like that I've worked in companies, and I know how much people pay those services, and it's really, really expensive. And they just come with computers and they're like, oh yeah, okay, what's the problem? This, okay, like put it in an Excel spreadsheet. Yes, just do this and do that. And like then when people, even in big corporations, and that's why people are so averse to change when you're working in a big corporation and they change like the CRM system. And then all of a sudden, everyone is having to work with a new system and everyone goes against it. And everyone is like, I don't understand how this works. Why did I have to change? Why is it so bad? Because they didn't bother consulting the people who are going to use the new system to see if they're comfortable using it. And they just, throw it into them and expect them to get on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Thanks for that, Philippa. Really good points. Wonderful. Let's go to Karen.
Hello, everyone. I agree, obviously, with everything everyone's been saying. It's also true, but this is my take on it, and I've written it down, so sorry if I sound like I'm reading from a script, but I wrote this myself. Firstly, why should organisations co-produce their work? I personally feel that big companies, i.e. Department for Work and Pensions, have no idea what it's like to live, for instance, on universal credit, which I am doing. It will bring them down from their ivory towers to actually find out what it's like and where they are going wrong. From their side of things, it is good for their image, as it shows they are really trying to understand their clients and their needs. In this day and age, things are changing fast, especially with COVID. More people are going to be on benefits, many that would never have thought that they would be on them right now. So co-production is needed now more than ever. I think the bigger the company, the less likely they are going to have any idea what life is like living on benefits in the 21st century. It's becoming more apparent to me that the more I co-produce, the more it is blindingly obvious that it should be part of everyone's approach that works or supports anyone with needs. Co-production is new in that the lived expert is in a project from the start to the finish, is listened to and respected. It is joint working at its best. In the past, organisations only used participation, where, for instance, I could give some views somewhere along the line, but it didn't really give a fluid picture, not a true sense of life. Being a lived expert in co-production, organisations get 100% true meaning and the knowledge earned and shared to enable them to move forward in a positive way. And in the end, it's all about respect as well. Number 2, what is the value of lived experience? Lived experience is a hard lesson to learn and earn. It's crucial if it is shared to enable the government and Department for Work and Pensions to actually realise the pitfalls of their systems that are in place. Nothing is 100% accurate, and it has been proven, as far as I'm aware, that universal credit is just not working. I personally have shared my lived experience with Turn2us in the past to enable them to understand more what it's like for lived experts. I had to give up my job due to a car accident, which wasn't my fault. As I'm almost 63, I cannot claim my pension. So as I fall into one of the many traps of people that need to be underlined, as although deemed fit for work, it is limited work, which in the current climate and due to COVID is almost impossible to find, whatever your age. But I am just one of those people out of millions now that really need to share their unique experiences, as it is invaluable first-hand knowledge that cannot be bought, has to be learnt, and in such a hard way too. Everyone's experience of life and hardship is so different, so many different pitfalls. How can lived experience not be a rich value to give the correct structure and strategy to charities and companies? And I hope that co-production continues to be used and not just a buzzword or a 5-minute wonder. Number 3, what are the barriers within co-production? The barriers are few, I think, mainly accessibility, finding out which organisations or charities need help in co-production, maybe a website to advertise them that is well known and visible. Also, the word co-production, I didn't know what it meant. I think it needs to be made public more visible, and explain what it is and what it achieves. Training is crucial too. Turn2us are training me online to understand it more, and a chance for me to share my ideas. Another barrier is internet access, and not everyone has this or the basic skills needed. In this day and age, we should all be able to afford and use the internet. Also, anyone whose English isn't their first language or cannot read or write, these folks' experiences would be really important. So there needs to be absolutely no barriers. Co-production is the way forward, and it's in everyone's best interest to use it, I think. That's me.
Thank you so much, Karen. That was really, really excellent. I'm glad it's written down, so I want to see it again.
Well,
it was really
I just
good.
feel so passionate about it all. Do you know what I mean? Because I didn't know what it was either. I'd never heard of the word. So, you know, there you go.
I think, yeah, like going on, like building on Charlene's point as well, like you did about it's the global pandemic, and people are even more in a position now. And people, yeah, perhaps need co-production now more than ever because they're in a less stable position. They need to be listened to. Like their lived experience is even more severe right now. So we need to know what it is, and the disparity between people who are absolutely fine during the pandemic and people who are really struggling. We need to hear those voices. Yeah. Thank you so much.
A lot of people hide their problems as well too, and are afraid to ask. Yeah. And the point you made around accessibility as well, like, yeah, we fully recognise at Turn2us that we're an online service really, with a helpline, but you might have to like go onto the website to find that. So for those that are digitally excluded, especially during COVID, with libraries being shut, which are sometimes people's only way of accessing the internet, that's a huge challenge, and we cannot forget or ignore those people. And from my perspective with co-production, I always try and make it clear that like tech should never be a barrier. Like we will help and try and provide that tech so that you can join our meetings if that's what's needed, of course. Okay, wonderful. That's exactly the timing that we planned as well. So now I'm going to hand over to Varun, who hopefully has got some questions for us.
I do indeed. So thank you very much. That was like, Karen, that was amazing. It's good to kind of get all those ideas and those thoughts and those feelings out, because I think that's one of the key things about co-production is it's about honesty. It's about people sharing their honest experiences, and so that better informs policy. Because as Emma Jane was saying, like, you know, if you're not consulted, like, how could you truly be helped? Because people don't really understand what you need. So we've got some good questions so far, and hopefully some more to come, but I think enough for us to discuss. So I'll pick one now. So somebody's wondering, would anyone on the panel like to co-produce with government? And what would you like to work on specifically? So let's go for, I don't know, Charlene first. I can see you on my screen. Or
Thank
anybody
you.
who wants to take that question.
Yeah, I'll start. So the question was, would I like to co-produce with government? And the answer would be yes. I think in order for them to have an holistic approach on their policies and to make sure that when they create a process that it actually works, to get the right feedback.
Anybody else have any more thoughts? Karen?
Oh, hello. Yeah. No, I really, because I was on your Twitter feed yesterday, and one of the main things I brought up was the fact about the Department for Work and Pensions. It's a pet thing of mine that I really, really would love to be able to help them, because I've been on universal credit now for 2 years. Someone will know, you know, I know exactly what it's like. I particularly hate is the fact that they stop 63p out of every pound that you earn is so wrong, and I think it should be at least put down to 50-50, you know. So that's my point on it. Yes.
And if they did, if you did co-produce with government, how would you like them to approach you? Like, you know, what what would be the easiest way for people to get involved with co-production? Is there anything that Turn2us have done that might, you know, the government could think about doing? What's your experience been like?
Well, I think in the beginning, as I said in my little speech, I think that there should be more visible, because loads of people don't know what it is. And you don't know who wants it. So I think there should be some sort of website, there might be, I haven't found one, that you could go to and offer your services, because that would be a good start. And I think the Department of Work and Pensions, if we all let them know, maybe they can contact us if they're listening, you know, if we were interested in doing it, because this is quite public. So yes.
We'll be sure to make sure that the video is shared with DWP, so hopefully they do
Good,
watch it.
thank you.
And they get in touch with Karen. So does anybody else want to take that question? Is that something that anybody here has been thinking about? And
well, as a former civil servant myself, I know that government could benefit hugely from the input of people with lived experience. It's the only way they're ever going to learn, frankly.
Any other thoughts, anybody? You're going to say something, Karen?
No, I was just saying, because they just haven't got any idea. I'm not being rude, but they really haven't. They haven't got a clue, not a clue. And many questions I've asked them, and they don't always know the answers of, because I think in the beginning, I think universal credit was put on like the local job centres. This is only my personal views, but they was put onto them, and they had no training or anything, because there was no money sent to them to have training, so they didn't know themselves. I had to Google things and try and get into their documents to try and find out what the answers were myself. And on a couple of occasions, I actually had to tell them their job, which isn't good, is it? And that is the truth, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. So we've got a few more questions. One of them, so a lot of people watching or who will watch the video might not be aware of one of the things that we use when we talk about co-production is a co-production ladder. And that's kind of like co-production at the very top. And Abby's probably better to speak to sort of explain the ladder, because I think the next question, if we're going to answer it, be good to have a bit more of an understanding. So Abby, if you could just briefly explain what the co-production ladder is.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for testing me, Varun.
Right.
So the co-production ladder comes from Think Local, Act Personal. So if you go onto their website, they're like the modern day creators of the ladder, and it's a framework to decide where your involvement activity would sit. So we say co-production as an umbrella term for all involvements, but co-production is actually like pure 50-50 power sharing. So people are involved from the start throughout, and they have equal decision-making power. And then as you go further down the ladder, the bottom rung is being coercion and the top being co-production. And in between, we've got like co-design, consultation, engagement, and educating. As you go down the ladder, less decision-making power is shared. So a common type of involvement on the co-production ladder is consultation, which a lot of companies, including the government, do. And it's essentially, come to this workshop, give your views, we might give you some money for it, and bye. And whilst it's a common and welcomed form of involving people, it is limited in as much as that people aren't really told where their views went, or whether their views were implemented, whether they contributed towards anything. And fundamentally, the power sharing is limited. So yeah, the way I view the ladder is like the further up you get from, and the aspirations are like co-design or co-production, is where, yeah, you're sharing more power with people rather than just asking for their views, but fundamentally still fitting it into the picture you think it should be.
Great, thank you very much, because that's super useful, because the question relates directly to that. So the very top of the ladder is co-production, is what we sort of aim for at all times. And hopefully the group feel that's what we're doing at Turn2us. And just beneath that would be consultation. So the question we got was, in your eyes as a panel, as people who've been involved in co-production, for you, what's the difference between co-production and consultation? Have you had experiences of both or either, and how does it feel for that to happen, and what does it feel, what does that look like to you? So is anybody who wants to answer that question? Emma Jane?
Being cynical, it's very easy for a consultation to be ignored. Whereas if co-production is integrated into the policy development, it's much more likely to be part of the final decision, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about something that I think relates to this, which is like when you experience any kind of service and they send you a survey afterwards, and they ask you, oh, did you like this? Did you like, how can we improve? And then they never get back to you. And it just makes them feel good. They're like, we're asking.
Yeah.
Asking if you're happy. We're
That's right.
trying to do our best. So they kind of, you know, get off, like, okay, yeah, we're listening. But actually, I always answer surveys. I am a bit addicted to surveys. Every one I get, I'm like, okay, there's an opportunity for me to say what I want. I do them. But yes, but how far did they go, and how did they impact their work? I don't feel there's that much impact. And the only way to actually be, you know, to take people's views is to actually speak with them and involve them in the process of decision making. I think this is key, that we are involved in the decision making, because otherwise it's very limited. And it's very kind of Excel based, kind of like metrics sort of work, which it's very, very, very impersonal and very disconnected from real life.
I think I've only done co-participation with Turn2us. I don't think I've done any participation or anything lower. It's always been, they've listened to me, I've said my piece or whatever, and it's always been that way as far as I've volunteered for Turn2us. That's my answer to the question. So I can't really compare.
I think a good example is the benefit calculator. We have workshops, we have discussions, we break it down, we digest the situations, we go through it as service users, and obviously to look at it to improve it for other people. Then obviously the designer takes down our notes, then he goes away and speaks to his team, and then he comes back with what he can do and what he can't do. So we're having all frank conversations, and we're able to use our experience and our frustration to make sure that lessons are learned and it doesn't happen again.
So just to give context for people watching, so Turn2us have a design group, so Lived Experts, our co-production team, working with us, so our in-house developers and various people within the charity, to develop a new version of our current benefits calculator. So we've got a benefits calculator, people who don't know what benefits they're eligible for, and perhaps if they're being underpaid, and maybe if they could get more, especially if they're facing financial hardship. In order to make that even more accurate and to help more people, we're sort of doing a new version of it, and to make sure, because we believe so much in co-production, that it's fit for purpose and it makes sense to people, to the widest group of people as possible. We're co-producing that tool. So that's a really good example. I wonder if anybody else, because it's actually another user question, anybody else have a good example of like co-production in practice? So Charlene, you say the benefits calculator, that somebody else might say the benefits calculator, that's absolutely fine. But any experiences that any of you guys have had, and where it's felt like really positive co-production in practice?
I think that's the first and only time I've really experienced co-production.
I'm trying to think. I've volunteered for you for a while. As you know, I've done things on the media, and I suppose in a way that was giving my story, in a way, was like co-production, but not as much as the benefits calculator, which we have help from start to finish, and we get told what's happening and how what we've done and suggested has helped, and is helping, from people that have our lived experts. So I mean, that's it in its pure form, really, isn't it? I think.
I've got another example. I've got another example of RBKC get together children with additional needs parents. So they come in and they have a conversation and they soundboard and they look at it. But the difference between the local authority and Turn2us is with Turn2us, you can actually see a change happening. You can see your voices being heard and you can see the progression of this. I find with other companies, I find that we come in, we have conversations, they'll put notes on the board, but then you don't really get any feedback. So you just feel that you've wasted time or you've had a bit of a chat with someone. But with Turn2us, I just feel that our words resonate and they want to make a difference for other people so things don't happen again that affect us so sadly.
Yeah, well said, Charlene.
Does anybody else have any more reflections on that? No. So I've got another question that's come through on Twitter. So somebody, Beth Meadows, has asked, how do you go about maintaining diversity in seeking out or working with co-producers? So I know this is something we're thinking about a lot. So we'll take that question first, and then she has another. So that might actually be more for Turn2us, if I'm honest. So I wonder if Abby, if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really important question, and it's the lens that we look through in recruitment. And so we look at normally people come through our benefits calculator and we go on to recruit them. So then we'll assess some of the data we have from that, which tells us a bit about people in terms of protected characteristics. And then we can go from there in how where we steer our recruitment. And it's a continual assessment. So we've got a pool of people that we give opportunities to, and we're kind of always trying to assess how representative that pool is of the UK. And at the moment, we feel like it's not quite right. So we are doing work to like specifically recruit different demographics. And yeah, it's something that is also pushed through by myself, but also through our Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee at Turn2us.
That's great. And does anybody else on the panel, I know it's very much on Turn2us to address this and to make sure we're as representative as possible. Does anybody on the panel have any thoughts about, Turn2us and maybe other charities, how can they perhaps feel more inclusive and accessible so that people from different communities actually get in touch or want to get involved with them? What would be key for you guys?
I think if more charities behaved in the way Turn2us does, this wouldn't be a problem.
That's true. Absolutely true.
Great, thank you very much. So actually, Beth had another question, so I'll just read that for you guys. So how far is reflecting on or holding the organisation to account over previous instances where co-production was not used as part of the co-production process? So I think you guys have sort of touched on this where, we've been working with co-production as a principle, but you've not necessarily seen your ideas and things come to fruition and being acted on. So kind of how is Turn2us or any other organization who works in that way, how can we hold them to account? What's the best way of doing that?
Well, I think we're really honest that we're in like the start of our journey, and like I wouldn't expect people to necessarily feel like we're fully co-producing all the time, but because we're not, but we're really, it's our aspiration and we just try and be transparent. So when we train people in co-production, we don't just train staff, we offer training to people in this group as well, people that have used our services, and we don't train them separately, we train them together, so people are in co-learning groups together. And I think that really helps with accountability, because then people are able to say their exact feelings about a Turn2us way of working to staff directly. You don't have to go through 7 rounds of bureaucracy and red tape to get to people. And I think that is just how you do it. Like, you're just really honest and you just get people in the rooms together, and that makes you accountable. And I think as well, there's external things you can do. So this year we'll be signing up to the 4PI framework on involvement, which is like a national framework that around 75 organisations have signed up to. And once we've gone through that process of implementing it, which will be co-produced, and once we've signed up to it, then we're accountable externally, and people can say, well, are you working to that framework? Because it's what you said you are doing.
Anybody else have any thoughts about, you know, if you were working with Turn2us and you don't necessarily feel, not just as individuals but as a group, that your ideas have really been like considered in the way that they are, and how would you want to communicate that? Does that add a bit of like pressure and stress to you that's sort of unnecessary to have to close that loop?
No.
I mean, from my experience working, I feel that I can express any concerns I have at any point, at any time, and that is made really clear by the people who are you know, managing the group. So I mean, because there is that attitude of like constantly checking on us. So do you feel you've been heard? Do you think we listened correctly? Do you think? So I feel so at ease to express any discontent or anything that I don't agree with, and I think that's, you know, it's really important that it is like this. But from as I haven't had any other experience with the co-production, from this experience, I feel that there's an open mic all the time for me to say what I need.
That's good to hear. I know that Abby has a really good way of sort of like establishing rules, ground rules for everybody that you can agree with as a team. Do you think that's the reason, or part of the reason, why you feel like you can express yourself and give feedback, and does that make the space feel safer and more inclusive?
Yeah, from the start, when I first came up before we had lockdown, up to Hammersmith, and I felt I was really impressed from the start. Obviously, I'd never done anything like it before, but I remember thinking, this company really, really believes in me, you know what I mean? And at my age too, it was something, I've never forgotten it, and really listened to everything I said all the way through, and they still do. So I mean, yeah, I've got no worries at all.
And what are the key ground rules, do you think, that are really useful for having a successful co-production session, or just generally as a way of working? What rules do you guys think are the most important, so that other people that are considering co-production might take into account?
Respect is the main thing. I think we've all got respect for each other. I've made so many good pals over this as well, you know, from people that I wouldn't normally have met. So it's respect and listening to what everyone says and taking it on board. That's me. I don't know what anyone else